Hi, I'm Lorena, and today I'd like to talk about how to trust the process and the journey that you're on when you're manifesting something, especially when things appear to be going wrong or they aren't moving at all. So often, when people are manifesting something, they tend to get caught up in their circumstances. And that may resonate with you. Maybe you find it difficult not to react to your circumstances. But what happens is that you may be living in the end for a while, or rather, you think you're living in the end, and then something opposing happens, something that you didn't anticipate at all, the exact opposite of what you want. Or nothing happens at all. And when either of these things happen or don't happen, what then often comes next is that people lose faith. They start doubting themselves, they start doubting the manifestation, and they give up or they waver. And unfortunately, that is exactly what just perpetuates the current situation. So if that rings true for you, if you lose faith or hope when you see no movement or you see the opposite movement of what you'd like to see, then my question for you is, what is holding you back from trusting the process? And I can tell you, in most cases, the answer will be fear, because maybe it's happened before. Maybe you had a positive expectation once and then you were disappointed. Maybe you were hurt or betrayed once and you don't want to risk that happening again. Or you've just had so many experiences where things didn't work out that now it's really hard for you to believe that they will, especially when you see the opposite reflected back to you. Fear is unfortunately what holds us back from committing to an assumption 100%. We are afraid of failure. We worry that if we really let go and if we really surrender to it, we may be proven wrong, and then it might hurt even more than if we prepared for the worst case scenario. So I get it. It's not always easy. It's a human thing to prepare for the worst case scenario. It's what our brains learned how to do. We just want to protect ourselves, or rather our egos do. But also remind yourself that if it's your consciousness of being and your perception of your circumstances that really shapes your reality, then preparing yourself for the worst case scenario and not going all in out of fear of failure is the worst thing you can do, because it turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Instead of asking yourself what could go wrong, start asking yourself what could go right. How do I prepare myself for the best possible outcome instead of the worst? Trusting the process basically means having faith in the unseen. And in order to do that, you really need to step into the unknown. And that's terrifying, because it means you need to let go. You need to let go of control. You need to let go of overanalyzing how things could happen and when things could happen. You just need to trust. You need to embrace that which you don't know. But let me tell you, it's really worth going through the fear and embracing the unknown, because that's where all possibilities exist, infinite possibilities. Let's address the question, why do things sometimes seem to go wrong when we're manifesting? Why does the opposite of what we want appear in the first place if we're so, clearly in the state? Well, first of all, maybe you're not. Maybe you're not, because then the circumstances wouldn't bother you. Maybe there are some unresolved fears. And that's, I think, what most of the time is really happening, that when we try and step into a new state of being, everything that is opposing that state of being, so that includes our really deep-rooted fears, the really unconscious fears that we're not aware of, they come to the surface, and that's uncomfortable. So that's often then when we go all in that all these uncomfortable emotions and fears come up, and sometimes we do see the opposite of what we want then manifest in the physical. But we need to remember that that is nothing to fear, because it's temporary, and if we persist, then it will shift again as well. I also think that sometimes it's a bit of a test in persistence. And I say this in air quotes because there's obviously nothing outside of you testing you. You don't need to pass a test. It's not a reward. But what I mean by that is, when it happens to me, I often see it a bit as a test from myself. How much do I really want this? Do I want this enough to persist even in the face of adversity? Or do I immediately give up when things get challenging? But whilst I'm addressing this question, I also want to say that things don't have to be hard. The stuff doesn't have to come up. It doesn't have to first go wrong, and it doesn't have to be difficult. So definitely don't have this expectation. But if it happens, then know that that is nothing to worry about. And then what it can also be coming from is the so-called bridge of incidents. The bridge of incidents could be a whole separate video, but I felt like it was really fitting for this topic. So I am going to partly address it. A bridge of incidents is basically a series of events that unfolds automatically once you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So that may be actions that you feel drawn to take. It could be things that other people do or say. It could be synchronicities you see, any experience you make, any circumstance you encounter. Everything after you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled is basically part of the unfolding to your manifestation, to your end result. So this has a lot to do with trusting the process, because the bridge of incidents not only can look completely different from how you anticipate it to, but also very often it only becomes clear whether something was part of the bridge of incidents after the manifestation has already unfolded. We often don't realize how different situations or circumstances relate to each other whilst we're in it. How many times in your life has something happened that then led you to something else happening that you never could have predicted? For example, maybe one day I missed the bus, but because of that, I'm on the later bus where I speak to a new person, and that person then invites me to a party where I meet my new best friend or a new client or whatever the case may be. You get the idea. It is so subtle that whilst we're in it, we don't know that it's related. So for the time being, what I suggest you to do is to simply assume that everything is related to the unfolding of your manifestation. Everything that happened in your life, every decision you made, every action you took, every thought you had even led you exactly here. Every circumstance had to happen exactly the way it did for you to end up where you are now. And maybe where you are now is not where you want to be, but that's okay because you're still on the path. The point is, we don't know what happens in between, and we don't know the role it plays for the outcome. So instead of worrying about the in-between, enjoy the journey. Be grateful for every experience. Stay in the moment. Rather than worrying or anticipating the future, stay right here in this moment. You won't ever have it again. You can be grateful for every lesson, even the uncomfortable ones. And maybe, just maybe, the situation that you're trying so hard to avoid is exactly what needs to happen for you to get the outcome you desire. Nothing is against you, even if it appears that way right now. You will see when it unfolds how where you are now was 100% necessary, and it couldn't have happened any other way. I hope this gave you a bit of trust. I love you so very much. Check out my article on this. My free self-love challenge and coaching information are in the description box below, and I'll see you next time.